Hey, this is Eric Durak from Medical Health and Fitness, and welcome to our GLP-1 online module training for our GLP-1 course. So the course came out a couple months ago, and we have it in printed form, we have it in digital form, and now we're going to have our audio and video formats for all of the people who are interested in taking this course. So I'd like to get started with our first module, and that module is coming up. So, what I'd like to do is start with a disclaimer and say that the information that's contained here is part of our education program and it's for education purposes. We're not here to talk about curing any disease or managing a disease like doctors do. Essentially, any of the issues that come about by training people who are on GIP medications needs to be discussed with other healthcare professionals, such as nutritionists, dietitians, physicians, endocrinologists, any other specialties. So it's important to discuss all of these informations with other healthcare professionals. And in my opinion, having the relationships with those professionals in the first place is going to be a very, very big step in having your program be accepted medically in your community. So, what is the problem? I mean, our latest statistics say that over 60% of Americans are obese. And what is the solution? Well, we really don't have an exact solution right now. But the reason that I put the book together on the advice from my top people, Eric Malzone from his tech podcast, and Bob Esqueri, who has been my business coach for a long time. Both of these men were very interested in having me have this course, and I was hesitant at first, but I'm glad I did because I just see so many benefits in having GLP as part of exercise programs for health clubs. So we want to talk about why exercise is so important, and we want to actually discuss in our module series how we can put fitness, exercise together with nutrition and have it be a lifestyle program. And then at the end of this first module, I'll have our summary, and I'll talk a little bit at the end about the exam questions that we have for the course. So some of the important people that I've been working with over the last couple of years in terms of getting my business restarted here at Medical Health and Fitness 2.0. The gentleman on the left in Santa Monica with me is Greg Sellar, and Greg is one of the nation's, well, one of the world's top health coaches, and I happen to be grateful that he's one of mine. On the upper right is Steve Abbey, whose company SOS Nutrients has sponsored me at the IDEA conference and other things that I produce and speak at. And in the lower right-hand corner is myself and Bob Esqueri at the recent URSA conference in Los Angeles, which is now the Health Fitness Association. So Steve's company, SOS Nutrients, has what I consider to be the world's leading super green formula. It has no synthetic vitamins whatsoever. It's sourced from all natural products. I'm very grateful to Steve to be a partner in the work that I'm doing in this space. And although I don't recommend a specific product for GLP-1 patients, I do talk about the effects of certain types of nutrients that people who are on this medication may need. And one of the more profound issues is getting nutrients into a system that's been sort of paralyzed by the use of the meds. So I think that SOS Nutrients has a place, but as I discuss in all of my modules, I would like my students to do research on their own, and we can discuss it at any time. All right, so the history of weight loss in America is a very interesting read. In the 1960s, for about 30 years, they had human chorionic gonadotropin, which they actually used for weight loss. And the reason it was pulled off the market is because it was ineffective. In the 1980s, they had very low calorie diets. And I really remember those in terms of the big thing on television shows and the news for people who were wanting to lose weight. They were essentially starving themselves to death. The problem with those diets and the reason that they went out of favor is that there were a lot of people who died from cardiovascular events. Um, so in the 1990s, they turned to fenfluramine, which is called fen-phen, and it was a very popular drug, but it was pulled on the market for after a few years because it was causing issues like pulmonary hypertension, and I think there were some issues with some strokes. But in general, the risk benefit ratio was a little bit too high. In the mid 2000s, there was a drug called ecopipam, which also was used in the weight loss industry. But after a large number of people who committed suicide, they traced it back to the drug, and again, it was pulled from the market. About 4 years ago, the American Medical Association and the pharmaceutical industry introduced a drug called lorcaserin for weight loss. And there were some issues with people developing specific types of cancers. So again, within a very short period of time, that medication fell out of favor in the weight loss industry. So now here we are over the last few years looking at GLP-1 medications. And are they going to be pulled off the market? I don't think they are. I've spoken with a number of people who work in the field of obesity medicine and obesity clinics, and they say that these drugs have a very high upside in short periods of time, and they have a reasonably a low downside. There are some side effects. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in general, they have not seen massive side effects like we have seen with some of these other medications. So for right now, I think that we're in a safe zone. And what I want to dive really deep into in these series of modules is the effects of exercise for people who are taking the GLP meds at what dosage, for how long a period of time, and we want to correlate to how much exercise that they're actually doing. So, how do GLP medications work? This is a very interesting description here. In general, they mimic the body's production of the naturally occurring peptide GLP-1, which is in the small intestines, which helps digest food and helps the satiety index, etc. And I think that with people who are overweight and obese, it works less and less. There may be other factors in terms of digestive problems, but for our thought process here, we say that the GLP medications synthetically replicate the mimic the actions of naturally occurring GLP. Number two is they increase the amount of insulin that's secreted from the pancreas, which is also very interesting because originally these medications were used for diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And in type 2 diabetes, you have insulin that's being produced, but it's not efficient. It does not get into the cells very well. So medicine's response to that was we need to add more insulin and hope that we can sort of saturate the system and see how much of that insulin can actually go to work. The interesting thing about exercise, which I will probably talk about a number of times during this presentation, is that when you exercise, you have what's called a non-insulin mediated glucose uptake. In other words, the cells become more efficient because of the force and the vast amount of blood that's flowing through the system with exercise, that over time, they can actually take up a certain percentage of glucose without having it bind to insulin to drive it into the cell. That's a very good thing, except during periods of hypoglycemia. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And number three, they decrease the amount of glucagon secreted from the liver, which is, again, lowering blood sugar. Everything here with increased insulin and lowering of blood glucose levels is a good thing in general for people who do not want to have hyperglycemia. Lastly, you have a reduced satiety index. And I believe that part of that is essentially the slowing of the food going through the intestinal tract via peristalsis, which is physiologically the definition of movement of food. And there's a normal peristalsis as you eat food until you eliminate it. But I also think that because there's a limit on the movement of this food, there also is a problem with absorption of nutrients of this food as well. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about in a little bit more detail in our nutrition section. But for right now, as a trainer, we have more GLP in the intestines, we have an increase in insulin, we have a decrease in blood sugar, and we also have a decrease in a person's perception of satiety, which means they're not going to eat as much. Again, we'll get into that in much more detail. So how are they used in medicine right now? This is a very interesting topic of discussion because the medical profession is really touting GLP medications as almost this, one of the greatest drugs that's come out in the last 25 years, because not only are they used for weight loss, they're also used in cardiovascular prevention. There are a couple studies that have come out that said that people who were taking GLP-1 medications decrease their risk for heart disease, heart attacks, cardiovascular events. I may say that they would do that just because they're eating less food, and the vessels may have the ability to sort of self clean themselves as they're pumping blood, but they're not pumping blood with as much food, and henceforth fatty deposits, etc. They're also touting that GLP-1s may reduce arthritis symptoms, which is essentially just looking at it from a pain standpoint. They may reduce kidney disease symptoms, which would be a massive improvement in a person's health if kidney disease symptoms can be reduced at any level, because having to have a person go through dialysis towards the end of their life is really one of the worst things that can happen to them. And also, they have said in this article that was in Scientific America just a few months ago, which I have quoted in my book, What's the Secret Behind Ozempic's Sweeping Health Benefits? They say that they may actually improve certain neurological symptoms. So we know that in diabetes, one of the symptoms is neuropathy of the feet. And if those symptoms can be improved, again, that's a real benefit. I remember a 1988 paper in Diabetes Care from Claudia Graham, where she actually touted the benefits of regular exercise in reducing diabetic complications over time as well. So I think the combination here, if I can make some general hypotheses, is that the use of GLP-1 medications and exercise in the right combination are going to have a very profound effect on a person's physiology over time. So let's sort of look at the fitness benefits in general. This is our overview module here. So I want to make sure that when we talk about things, I'm discussing them now so we can whet your appetite down the road. We'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. So the first thing about exercise and lifestyle is circulation. And if someone said to me, well, Eric, what is the most important thing about doing regular exercise over time? I would say it probably has to do with circulation. It's the most powerful attribute of regular exercise of any kind, is that how it can affect the circulatory system, both in the periphery, in the heart arteries, and in the main arteries, how they pump that blood through the body. Number two is strength. I will say this time and time again in our module series. Health clubs and fitness centers and even muscle gyms have one massive advantage that Jenny Craig Weight Watchers, your local weight loss clinic, do not have. They are strength machines. And those strength machines may be the best medicine for at least maintaining lean body mass, muscle mass over time in people who are on GLP medications. Now, that may have something to do with the amount of drug they're taking, but in general, we will probably see as we get more and more people involved in this, is strength training is going to be the medicine of choice for both doctors and the exercise physiology and training profession. Number three is coaching. I've said this for almost 30 years in my profession, that a trainer and a coach can have so much influence on a person because they see them more than 2 or 3 times a year as their doctors do. So trainers can have this opportunity to really move an agenda forward with their GLP-1 clientele. And I'm going to be talking about the behavioral aspects of training and coaching in another module. But I will say this in this module, I think it's extremely important. I think the behavioral aspects of training people who want to come in for weight loss programs is absolutely paramount. And I've gotten a lot of information from a lot of people in the field now as I've written the book and I'm getting the book out to the profession. So the next one is either Ozempic GLP-1 referrals. This is really one of the first times in my professional career where I've seen doctors in weight loss clinics who are looking to refer their GLP-1 patients to health clubs. And the reason is that they want them to maintain as much of their muscle mass, their lean body tissue as possible. And they believe that the exercise is one of the most important components. So the last one I have on this slide here is lifestyle. And it's moving just from these small group exercise programs, which is what I'm going to recommend for GLP-1 training. I think from the very first day where you show them the health club, they should be in a group. This group is going to be their accountability. It's going to be their camaraderie. It's going to be their assistance in how they're working on the machines when the coach, isn't talking with one particular person. And I believe that these programs, and I actually have Ann Gilbert, who is one of the top people in the health club field, and she starts her weight loss programs in the swimming pool, which I found to be amazing. And the reason is that they start out in a group, they start out together, they learn the basic movement patterns with this moderate resistance. And then after a period of time, they'll go on to land-based training. I think Ann has got spot on this. I know there are lots of clubs that don't have pools, but I think that getting people started in a small group setting where they can actually become friends is going to be part of that lifestyle experience. I think that's a very, very important topic that many trainers might not think of right off the bat. Well, let's look at some current research. And believe me, the last 3-4 months, I've been diving into hundreds and hundreds of studies on strength training, on weight loss, on the GLP-1s. I've looked at historical issues as well. And there's just a lot of information to go through. But I want to talk about a study that was done in 2024 by Jensen and colleagues. And he was looking at exercise plus liraglutides, which is one of the GLP medications, and they maintained long-term weight loss better than just using the medication alone. Now, this is not a huge study with a large database, but I think that if you're looking at training people for 6 months or a year or longer, this is one of the studies that says, hey, if you combine the exercise and the medication, you're going to have better outcomes over time. So Hamasaki in 2018 looked at fitness that may improve the gut microbiome and improve the GLP-1 resistance. Very important. I am such a student now of gut health in terms of my previous work in cancer, where a lot of the gut biome is destroyed by chemo and radiation. And I see a lot of similarities with those medical treatments and GLP-1 is that it does have a destructive effect on the ability of the gut to produce the biome and to digest the foods properly. So the use of exercise is actually helping to improve this process. And again, I think it's fantastic. A study by Lundgren, also in 2018, looked at exercise plus liraglutide and saw twice the weight loss and the body fat loss as the medication alone. So now what Lundgren and colleagues did is they separated out just standing on the scale versus doing either a DEXA scan or a BIA body comp and looking at body fat as a percentage. And the reason I like this study from its standpoint is that health clubs have another big advantage in that they do body composition testing. And I'm a big favor of impedance testing because it looks at body water, body fat, and lean body tissue. And having that data as you're tracking the health status of your clients over time, again, is an absolutely huge game changer. But it's something that's been in health clubs for the past 50 years with skin folds and underwater weighing, and now impedance, and now DEXA, and now bod pods, and all these other types of body composition methodologies. I think it's fantastic. And again, it's something that most health clubs have right there. The last uh, study that I'm looking at is actually part of the first study, but it's a separate issue. I wanted to put it separately. Exercise saw a higher level of bone density even after this large amounts of weight loss. One of the most important things outside of total body water is bone and bone health, because the structure of the body needs to improve with exercise. And if the bone density keeps going down and down, you're having a net negative effect of exercise. So there's a lot of research that needs to be done, but these four studies really sort of blasted out at me in terms of their efficaciousness, if I could use a bigger word there, on how well exercise will work for these people. There's still a ton of research that needs to be done, from both short-term exercise programs and long-term. I'll say 6 months to a year to maybe a year and a half of people who are using the GLP medications. But I think that research is coming. I'm involved with a couple short-term research pilot studies myself, but the information is going to be coming much quicker over the next couple of years. So what do we know about exercise? Well, clearly exercise does help with weight loss. It may not be one of the best methods or one of the best researched methods right now, but exercise and strength training, I think, has the biggest impact on body composition and weight loss. The second thing is that regular training can maintain weight loss over a period of time. All right. And number three is exercise in combination with a change in a person's diet will probably have the biggest effect. Well, maybe not probably, it will have the biggest effect, but it has to do with the type of foods they eat. Our work right now as an industry is working with people who are eating very little food. So a change in diet for these people has already happened. So what we're trying to do is to figure out the best way possible of making this system work. The second thing here is mental health. I said it in one of the previous slides. I have an entire module on mental health. Um, Exercise and diet are going to have a big effect on a person's mental well-being over time. Daily and weekly routines will help alleviate stress. They will help with feelings of self-efficacy. And for persons who are taking GLP medications, working with qualified staff people can help them emotionally and mentally prepare for this lifestyle change that they're embarking on with this, quote, chronic weight loss program. So the lifestyle approach that I talk about, obviously exercise, the strength training prescription, and a dose of moderate aerobics. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The best fit model for how many days a week a person should actually exercise could be 2, could be 4, could be 5. We don't know that yet. Trainers need to use best practices and health outcomes in terms of achieving success. And one of those health outcomes is regular communication with the medical profession. On the nutrition side, you'll probably get recommendations and work with a dietitian or a nutrition coach beforehand, and just see what they're eating. And I think we really need to ask people on a regular basis how much food they've had during the day and do a quick calculation of calories so we know that they're ready to do the exercise. Hydration is extremely important. I'm going to talk about that pretty much one of the other modules a lot, because I think that hydration is one of the most important things. Clients need to be sipping water or electrolyte water on a regular basis, and also protein intake. In my book, I have a number of people who talk about how much protein you should have, and because it's so important to repair all of the tissue that's being broken down, not just with exercise, but with the use of the medication. And again, I talk about BIA assessments for body composition, the analysis on a weekly basis in terms of percent fat, lean body mass, and water content. And it's absolutely a great method to show the results to physicians. This is one of the communication things that I want to talk about. because doctors may not understand the issue about water, but if you can show them the percentage of water over time as people get more fit, I think that the physician groups are going to be very, very interested in that, not just the body fat. So here we are coming to the end of this first module. And I feel that exercise is going to play such a critical role in the upcoming years, from having proper staff training, being able to do great assessments, which we'll talk about in another module at length, the community and physician relationships we've talked about a couple times, proper exercise prescription, which is going to be different for each individual person, and then really discussing health outcomes. So that's the basic formula right now for working in GLP. And I know that there are groups like Equinox and Lifetime who are already diving into this. And I work with people who have worked with exercise with GLP patients for the last year and a half or 2 years. So I want to use some of their experiences in our upcoming module series. So if you are interested in looking at module exam questions, I have them on SurveyMonkey. I have this SurveyMonkey list here, but if you go to my website, medhealthfit.com, and click onto the GLP-1 page, that SurveyMonkey link will be right there. You can click right on the page. For each module, I have 4 to 6 questions, or you can take the 40-question exam and get it over with, but I'd rather you take the questions as they come in each individual module, because it's only a few of them, and I'm hoping that everyone can, do very well on the questions. So I appreciate you being a part of this module series, and I hope that we will be able to have a line of communication. You can always email me at directfitness@gmail. Log onto the site for more information, and I look forward to working with all of you over the next few weeks with some live presentations, as well as these recorded presentations, which we'll have up on YouTube. So anyway, this is Eric Direct from Med Health Fit, and thanks for being a part of our very first module.